Hello there. Today, I'm going to do what no one else can. Defeat the Islamic dilemma. My argument is very simple. The argument isn't sound. And if it isn't sound, it can be dismissed. It's a short video that will get to the point fairly quickly. Hang around a few minutes for me to build a case. Part 1, I'll show the Islamic dilemma, discuss soundness in an argument with an analogy to the problem of evil, and then discuss how the Islamic dilemma isn't sound. Then, part 2, I'll discuss the updated version, the Bayesian Islamic Dilemma, and respond to that using an argument for the existence of God from fine-tuning, showing how that is analogous to the Bayesian Islamic Dilemma. Part 1. The Islamic Dilemma is as follows. The Quran affirms the inspiration, preservation, and authority of the previous scriptures, the Torah and the Injil. Yet the Quran contradicts the previous scriptures. Therefore, if the Quran is true, it disproves itself. But if it's not true, then why Islam? So what does it mean for an argument to not be sound? It means that the premises can be true without the conclusion necessarily following from the premises. Therefore, if the premises are true, the conclusion isn't necessarily true. For this video, I'm only focusing on if the Quran is true side of the dilemma. To use an example of an argument that is not sound, the problem of evil. The logical problem of evil states that if God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-good, he wouldn't permit there to be evil. But evil exists. Therefore, either God doesn't exist or he loses one of his attributes. And if he loses one of his attributes, then why call him God? This argument has been completely obliterated by Alvin Plantinga in his book God, Freedom and Evil, then repeated by countless philosophers since, including the most well-known proponent of the Islamic dilemma, Dr. David Wood. Dr. David Wood even got his doctorate in responding to the problem of evil. He should accept that there is no logical problem of evil, as this argument isn't sound. Plantinga states, to show that the argument isn't sound, all he needs to prove is that there is a way to assert all of the premises are true, and yet disagree with the conclusion. And this way doesn't need to be true in and of itself. All it needs to do is be logically possible. The response to the problem of evil is to say that humans have free will. This means God can be logically all-powerful, all-knowing, and all good, and yet evil can exist if beings created with free will have the freedom to cause evil. And he doesn't need to argue that humans do have free will. All he needs to argue is that it is logically possible that humans could have free will, for the argument to not be sound. Therefore, even a staunch, hardcore determinist can use the free will defense of the problem of evil even though they don't believe in free will. Plantinga can then assert that the premises are true, but disagree with the conclusion because the argument isn't sound. What does this have to do with the Islamic dilemma? Simply, is there a Quranically permissible way to show that the Quran affirms the previous scriptures, it contradicts what we do have, and if the Quran is true, it doesn't necessarily disprove itself? My answer here is yes. The Quran was revealed to Muhammad in the early 600s AD in the Medina and Mecca areas. Is it logically possible and Quranically permissible that the true scriptures were preserved only in this area? When those who present the Islamic dilemma argue against this, they attack it using history. Who, when, and how? Who changed it? When was it changed? And how was it changed? But these questions about history are irrelevant to the soundness of the argument. We're aiming to show that there is a Quranically permissible way to answer, and if there's any possibility of it being Quranically permissible, then the argument isn't sound and can therefore be dismissed, just like the problem of evil has been. To say there's no historical evidence that the true scriptures were preserved only in this area is an understatement. In fact, there's pretty much historical evidence to the contrary. But As with a determinist using the free will defense of the problem of evil, it doesn't necessarily need to be true for it to disprove the soundness of the argument. And if the argument isn't sound, it can be dismissed. So, is it Quranically permissible? Honestly, I'm not a Quran scholar. I've barely read parts of it. What I do know is that the preface of each surah includes where it was revealed. What's the point of showing where it was revealed if not to show who it was revealed to? The Bible does this as well. It's written to certain people, but it's written for all people. To best understand it, we need to understand who the people it was written to were. Is it Quranically permissible to suggest that the surahs talking about the people of the book being called to judge by the book they have, these surahs were speaking to a specific people in a specific place at a specific time with a specific now lost book? Is it Quranically permissible to suggest that the essence of the previous scriptures, what Muhammad was called to guard over and protect, were captured and preserved in the Quran? Is the Quran predicting that while Allah's words haven't changed, they have been lost due to sinful dilution and corruption condemned by the Quran? Here, we don't need to believe that the previous scriptures are corrupted. All we need is the possibility that they could have been corrupted. This doesn't even need to be the correct way to read the Quran, only a logically possible way. And if the Quran allows the idea that they could have been, then it's logically, Quranically permissible to agree with all the premises of the argument, but not the conclusion. To add a little something on top here, it has been said of the problem of evil that if we, as finite beings, can consider any response, how much greater would the true response from an infinite being be? This response only needs to be possible for it to show the argument sound. And in Islam, we mortals are not children of God. Instead, we're slaves. If this is the response from Christians for the problem of evil where God loves you, how much more true would it be in Islam? So my argument is, if there is a logically possible, Quranically permissible way to interpret the Quran as saying the scriptures have been lost or corrupted, then the Islamic dilemma isn't sound, and like the problem of evil, it can be dismissed. So where to from here? I don't know the Quran. I'm a Christian. I'm responding to this argument for the sport of it. And if I can come up with a response that holds any water by analysing the logic of the argument, then it's any century now that an Islamic apologist would follow the same line of thought. What this shows is the incredibly high bar set for those who are proponents of the Islamic dilemma. For the argument to be sound, it needs to be logically impossible for there to be a way to read the Quran that allows for corruption or loss of previous scriptures. And this is one of a few responses given by Islamic apologists. So if any other response is logically possible, and it's logically possible to use that response to interpret the Quran appropriately, it doesn't even need to be right, only possible, then the Islamic dilemma isn't sound and can be dismissed. So, the two paths from here. I have sufficient trust in the Christians who present the Islamic dilemma. If there's something to my argument, I can almost guarantee that they are intellectually honest enough to present it, potentially even stronger than I have here, then assess the validity of this as a response to their arguments. There are a lot of live streams and content creators looking for videos like this to respond to. On the flip side, I am not an Islamic apologist, and if you are an Islamic apologist watching this, consider this. I have set you up for success. I'm passing you the ball in front of an open goal. It would be terribly embarrassing for you if you missed with a setup like this. Part 2. Responding to the update, the Bayesian Islamic Dilemma. Looking at the video on Inspiring Philosophy's channel and looking specifically at the Lost Injil hypothesis, because that's what I've focused on so far, from 2350-ish onward, they argue that the likelihood of the Injil being lost is vanishingly improbable, that we can treat them as a sliver of probability. This is an admission that there is a logical possibility that the Injil has been lost. Thereby, they're affirming the original Islamic dilemma isn't sound. It's worth watching their whole video. This certainly isn't the conclusion that they draw. You can start from that section, but that section relies on earlier sections of the video. The presenter, Fan, then goes on to describe that the upper bound of likelihood for Islam being true is 1 in 2,500. Again, let's attack this with a different argument that the channel has historically agreed with. Consider an argument for the existence of God from fine-tuning. The odds of it being true that a life-permitting universe exists is nearly zero. The only way to overcome the odds is through direct intervention from God. Therefore, the only way that it is true that a life-permitting universe exists is through direct intervention from God. We could go through the maths to show how incredibly slim the odds of a life-permitting universe is for the first premise, or showing that chance couldn't overcome the odds to defend the second premise. But that's not the point of this video, and it's an argument that a person who believes in God would already highly likely agree with. Suffice it to say, the upper bounds of likelihood for a life-permitting universe existing is also less than 1 in 2,500. The analogy is simple. Substitute the life-permitting universe exists with the Injil and Torah being corrupted. So that leaves us with the conclusion: the only way it is true that the Injil and Torah have been corrupted is through direct intervention from God. That leaves us with the question: is there direct intervention from Allah? Is it likely that Allah corrupted the Injil and Torah and left no evidence for it? From what I know of Allah, and I haven't read the Quran in many years, it certainly seems like it could be within his character to do so. Allah is described as the greatest of deceivers. It could be within his nature to use the historical evidence to point in the opposite direction of what happened. Is it likely that Allah caused the Injil and Torah to be lost? He certainly abrogates what's in the Quran and allowed sections of the Quran to be lost due to the only ones who had it memorized dying in battles, or for sheep eating it. If he allows this with the capstone of his revelations, why would you presume it wouldn't happen for the previous scriptures? So odds don't matter. God can overcome the odds if he wants. The question is, does he want? As I mentioned above, I'm not an Islamic apologist. This is a question for you. We could adjust the argument. We could potentially adjust the argument above to say that it would require intervention not necessarily from God, but from an incredibly powerful being to overcome the odds. This too is a possibility, for Muhammad was deceived, believing that he had heard revelation from Allah, but it turns out it was a powerful demon, which is where you get the satanic verses from. If Satan is interacting with the Prophet of Islam, causing errors to arise from his recitations, then there's certainly the possibility of that same being interacting in the world beyond just that one bloke. It certainly seems Islamically permissible to suggest that there are powerful beings interacting with this world, and if they're powerful enough to deceive Muhammad, they'd certainly be powerful enough to overcome odds where the upper bounds are 1 in 2,500. The problem with this response is it would be unfalsifiable with physical or historical evidence. What historical evidence could be presented to show the truth or falsehood of this if Allah, or a powerful demon, is tampering with that evidence? And, therefore, the only way to properly attack this argument is to defend Allah, which I think would be hilarious to see those who usually attack Islam defending Allah as being trustworthy with history. Where to from here? Islamic apologists, Dawah, honestly, you guys are being demolished. Your present responses are terrible, and you know it. This should be a massive leg up to you. I'm giving you a framework to build off. Here are a few potential ways to defend your religion. Like, share, subscribe, I guess.